These kind of interpretations are not really in line with what the actual truth is behind Devi. It's very, very disrespectful, rather. So Mahakali, for example, is not at all a blood-sucking being. Even though we see Mahakali with her tongue protruding out and filled with blood and all those heads, the severed heads called Mundamala. So the garland of severed heads around her neck. But that does not mean that she is like some crazy murderer going around and killing people or killing demons. No, that's not what it means. Mahakali is the divine mother herself. And mother's nature is compassion, mother's nature is love. So we have to understand the deeper significance of these symbolisms. On one side, when we say there is a Mundamal around Kali, we also see that Devi has her breasts also. So what it means is that depending on how we approach Devi, if we approach Devi with the attitude of a child who has surrendered everything to her mother, the mother is all compassionate. The mother gives the milk of devotion and wisdom. But for those who are creating disharmony in society, disharmony in nature, for such asuras, she has to create a balance by annihilating them. But again, this annihilation is not out of revenge. This annihilation is not out of hatred. Mother is doing it out of compassion. It's just like, for example, Amma often gives this example. When a doctor, let us say somebody has cancer, a tumor, cancerous tumor. Now, when doctor performs the surgery, he is actually taking out a part of your body out. He is removing the tumor. So, it would be wrong to say that doctor is actually cutting us and extracting a part of us as if out of revenge. No. Doctor is doing it out of compassion. That tumor needs to be removed. Otherwise, it will spread in the whole body. So similarly, unless these demonic, asuric nature people, or as I said yesterday also, it actually represents the vrittis in our mind. Vrittis in our mind, the asuric tendencies in our mind, unless these are eradicated, it will affect the whole society, it will affect our whole being. So that is a deeper significance of Mahakali. She is not a blood-sucking mother, she is an all-compassionate mother. We all know of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, how he had that attitude of a child towards the Dakshineshwara Kali. So, we have to always remember this when we are talking about these stories, these allegorical stories in Durga Saptashati. All the asuras that we see, they are the negative tendencies of vrittis in our mind. They are not to be mistaken as some real people in some historical event. They are right here within us. And what are those asuras? What are those asuric tendencies? When we want to exploit others, whether it is nature or whether it is other people, whatever it is. When we become selfish, when we become greedy. So asura does not really mean somebody with, as they show in the TV serials and the movies, it does not really mean somebody with long teeth coming out from the sides and big hair and maybe making a very ferocious sound. Ha 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 ha, not like that. Those things are just exaggerations of it for entertainment. They are for kids, not for adults. Adults need to understand the deeper essence of these scriptures. But unfortunately, because we have lost touch with our scriptures, especially the Hindu society, we take these stories only very, very literally, and we treat them like comic books. But there is a very, very deep significance of all this, as I covered some of it yesterday also. So Asura basically means anybody who is always thinking, what is in it for me? What can I get rather than what can I give? So the bhoga or enjoyment is the only goal of such people. They are called asuras. And when your ultimate goal is not bhoga but rather yoga, you become recipient of that wisdom which takes you closer to God. So both asuras as well as devatas are within you, and what you want to invoke is up to you. As long as we are in this body, in this human body, we have to be careful. We have to be careful, as I mentioned yesterday, because this body is an outcome of Prakriti. And Prakriti has three gunas, the Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. And the play of these three gunas will always be there. So we have to balance, we have to maintain a balance. And we have to know how not to come under the influence of these gunas. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also says, if I remember correctly, I think verse 22 of 13th chapter, he says, Purushaha prakritistho hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasango asya sad asad yoni janmasu. Meaning, when an individual or when a jiva who is always living in this body, which is an outcome of Prakriti, when the individual desires to enjoy the three gunas, then what happens? Attachment to these enjoyments becomes the cause of his or her birth, whether in the superior wombs or the inferior wombs. We won't go into those details, but it becomes a cause of rebirth. So remember yesterday we covered those two demons, Madhukaitab, attachment and aversion, which represent attachment and aversion. So we have to be very careful with this attachment and aversion. And as long as we are in this body, which is made of these Trigunatmika Prakriti, attachments and aversions will rise. These demons will keep coming, and we have to be careful. Otherwise, it will lead us into birth after birth, the cycles of birth and sufferings. There used to be a song, very old song from, I think, Amitabh Bachchan's movie, which went something like, Aapka to lagta hai bas yehi sapna, Ram Ram Japana Paraya Malapana. So basically, when we are outwardly behaving and appearing as if we are very divine, as if we are very good, very noble, but internally, our whole center, our whole focus is, how will I get? It need not be things, mind you. It need not be things. It could be recognition. It could be fame. It could be some sort of a subtle incentive. Sometimes I've seen, especially in Himalayas, people dress up like sadhus, but their whole focus is how to get money from people and then how to take ganja, opium. That is their whole focus. And similarly, in our day-to-day life, we see people all around. Outwardly, they behave in a totally different way, but internally, they may not be the same. Outwardly, they may appear very good, but not internally. So, it's not by external looks that you can make out whether one is an asura or not. Only that person will know. And of course, Devi will know. It's very internal. Those who are asuras, they are always power-mongering, power-seeking. They want control over everything. Whereas devatas are more benevolent. Devatas are always in line with the rhythm of the universe, which is called Rita. Rita. In Vedas, that rhythm of universe is called Rita. They are always in line with dharma. But whenever they go out of dharma, the asuras attack them. And then the war starts. And you know what happens after that. The Devatas reach out to Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh or to Devi and cry out so that they can be saved. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is nowhere giving a description of Asuras with horns and big teeth. It's all about the qualities. And that is why in the chapter 16, Asuri Sampat and Daivi Sampat, where Krishna talks about Asuri Sampat and Devi Sampat. Remember how he talks about Daivas or Devatas? What is the divine qualities? What are the divine qualities which makes one not Asura? Abhyam. Remember those first three shlokas. Abhyam Sattva Samshuddhi, Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti, Danam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyaya Tapa Arjavam. Ahimsa, Satyam, Akrodha, Tyaga, Shantirapaishunam, Daya Bhuteshu Loluptam, Mardvam Hre Chapalam, Teja, Shama, Dhriti, Shaucham, Adroho, Na Atimanita, Bhavanti, Sampadam Daivim, Abhijatasya Bharata. So Lord Krishna is saying very clearly, the saintly virtues, the divine virtues. What are those divine virtues? Fearlessness, purity of mind, interest in spiritual wisdom, steadfastness in spiritual knowledge, charity, control of the senses, sacrifice, study of the sacred books, scriptures, austerity, straightforwardness, non-violence, truthfulness, absence of anger, renunciation, tyaga, peacefulness, restraint from finding faults, no dosha drishti, compassion towards other living beings, absence of covetousness, not trying to cheat anybody, gentleness, modesty, lack of fickleness, vigor, teja, forgiveness, kshama, fortitude, cleanliness, shaucha, no enmity towards anyone, and finally, absence of vanity. So these are the divine qualities. And what are the qualities of Asuras, which Bhagavan says in the 4th verse of 16th chapter? Bhagavan says, Dambar dharpo abhimanascha, krodha parushyam evacha, ajnanam cha vijatasya, partha sampadam asurin. O Arjuna, the qualities, the demonic qualities are hypocrisy, damba, arrogance, darpa, conceit, abhimanam, pride, anger, harshness, being very harsh, and of course ignorance, ajnanam. These are the qualities of Asuras, not big horns and big teeth. There was a grandmother who was telling the story of Ramayana to her grandson. And she told the entire Ramayana. And when she reached the last part where Rama and Ravana were engaged in the battle, on the battlefield, she stopped. And the grandson became very curious to know what happened later. Who won the war? He kept asking, Grandma, who won the war? Tell me. Grandmother did not tell him. He kept on asking for many days, many years. When he grew up, he again asked grandmother, Mother, why are you not telling me who won the war? Maybe that was the time when there was no Google, otherwise he would have Googled it and found out. But he kept on asking. And finally, when grandmother kind of felt that he had that maturity now, grandmother said, My dear son, you will decide who wins the war. What is in the Purana is not important. Ramayana is not just a story. It is your life. You will decide who wins the war. If you become Ram, Lord Ram, like him, Rama will win the war. But if you become like Ravana, Ravana will win the war. So you have to decide. Similarly, this Devi Mahatmyam, Durga Saptashati, is not just a story. It is for us to realize that Devi, Devatas, as well as Asuras are within us. Whether we want the Asuras to win or we want Devi to win, the decision, choice is ours. Some of the points that we covered yesterday from the first Charitam, a quick recap of that, and then we'll enter the second Charitam. So we saw yesterday that the whole first Charitam starts with the story of Markandeya Rishi is telling a story about Sabarni, who is the first Manu, first man of the 8th Manvantara. Remember, I told you the time is cyclic. Each cycle is called Manvantara in Sanatana Dharma. So it's the 8th cycle, 8th Manvantara. The first Manu, who is the Surya Putra, his name is Savarni. So this is the story of that. And mind you, right now, according to the Puranas, we are in the 7th Manvantara. So we are talking about the Manu of the next Manvantara. That is the story going on. So we are in the 7th Manvantara now, where the Manu was named Vaivasvat. Anyway, those details are not important, but there is a significance why Markandeya Rishi is talking about the Savarni, who is the Manu of the next Manvantara. Basically, it signifies that Rishi is talking about our own evolution, our own higher possibility, what we can become. So that is why Savarni, the Manu of the next Manvantara. And Surya, because he is a Surya Putra Savarni, Surya represents wisdom, knowledge, self. So by wisdom, we get a new birth, which is Savarni. That is the allegorical meaning of it. Now, I told you also that these two demons, Madhu and Kaitab, they were born from the Mala, from the Karna, the earwax. What that meant was that as long as this body is there, thoughts, feeling, emotions, these will arise. And we have to be careful with them. These thoughts, feeling, emotions will be born of these three gunas. And any time the negative tendencies can creep in. Look at Vishwamitra, a very, very famous example. He was sage of such a high order, but even he kept on slipping many times from his spiritual path. The moment he saw the Menaka, a lustful thought arose, and then he again lost all that he had gained with his penance. So we have to be very careful. And I remember in Bhagavad Gita, I think verse 34 or 33, chapter 3rd, Lord says, Indriyasya indriyasyarthe, Indriyasya indriyasyarthe, ragadveshu vyavasthitau, tayohu na vashamagachetau, hasya paripanthanam. Which means that senses, our sense organs are naturally, they will experience attachment and aversion. Ragadvesho vyavasthitau. The moment they come in touch with sense objects, attachment and aversion will happen. But be careful. Do not get controlled by them, because they are the biggest foes, biggest enemies on this path. So we have to be very careful, because we have both lower prakriti in us, higher prakriti also in us. We have to be careful about the lower prakriti. And yesterday we also saw how Devi deludes the two demons, Madhu and Kaitab. Right? So that is denoting that Vinasha Kale Viprita Buddhi. There is a saying. When the end is near, when you are on a path of destruction, destroying yourself, your buddhi will not work straight. Your intellect will not work straight. Vinasha kale viparita buddhi. Your mind will always, your intellect will always give you wrong suggestions. Viparit, opposite of what should be done. So that part also we have to be careful. But remember, Devi is immanent and transcendent at the same time. This whole creation is nothing but Devi. As Amma says, creator and creation are one. There is also a beautiful bhajan where Amma is saying, Kadinnu kadai manasin manassai, kanninnu kannai vilasinnu ramme. Means, oh mother, you are the eye of the eye, ear of the ear, mind of the mind. Oh Devi. Basically what it means is that Devi is the substratum of all that we see in the Prakriti, even in this body. Our sense of hearing, our sense of seeing, our sense of smell, our sense of touch, our sense of taste. These are all working because of the power of Devi. It's nothing but Devi's power. But we will only realize this once we go deeper into ourselves. Once we understand these scriptures, inner meaning of these scriptures, not just externally. In 1008 names of Devi, Lalita Sahasranam, there is a mantra which says, Antarmukh Samaradhyaye Namah. And the next one says, Bahirmukh Sudurlabhaye Namah. Means, Devi, you are the one who needs to be worshipped mentally. Antarmukh Samaradhyaye Namah. Now, worship here does not only mean that you imagine that you are waving a light in front of Devi or a camphor. That is good, that is good. There is nothing wrong in it. It's a good upasana. But worshipping also means to be able to see that Devi within you. Antarmukh Samaradhyaye Namah. Bahirmukh Sudurlabhaye Namah. And Devi is difficult to be attained, very difficult to be attained by those who are extroverted. Those who are trying to find Devi outside, they will not be successful in knowing the essence of Devi. We also looked at yesterday what the Stuti of Durga or Stuti of Devi means, because we see Brahma doing Stuti of Devi, we see Devatas doing Stuti of Devi every now and then in Durga Saptashati or Devi Mahatmyam. What does it mean? It means to not have dosha drishti for Prakriti, to cultivate love, qualities such as love, compassion, sacrifice, which we talked about, Daivi Sampat, and give up Asuri Sampat, give up greed, cleverness, pride, selfishness, give up all the utilitarian approach, not thinking about bhoga only. So, what it overall means that our attitude towards spiritual life is important. Spirituality is not just external paraphernalia. It is a very, very deep inner transformation and inner journey. And Devi will fulfill the goal of your journey depending on what your goal is. If you're like Suratha, you remember the Suratha, the king who lost his kingdom. If you're like Suratha, who only wanted his kingdom back, Devi will grant you that. But if you approach Devi like Samadhi, who even though was a merchant, but his nature was like a Brahman. He wanted knowledge. He wanted moksha. So when we approach Devi or Guru like that, we get moksha. So it is up to us. Our mind, our goal determines where we go. And that is why Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita, Uddharet Atmana Atmanam Na Atmanam Avasadaye. Atmaim hi Atmano Bandhu Atmaiva Ripuratmana. That you alone can elevate yourself by your own mind. And you must. Don't give it up. Because your mind is your best friend and your mind is also your worst enemy. And we also saw allegorically that every now and then in Devi Mahatmyam also, in Bhagavad Gita also, the battlefield is the ground. the background. So what that denotes is that we must fight against these negative tendencies. Bhagavan also says in many places, Yudhyasva, Yudhyasva, Yudhyasva. Come on, fight Arjuna. 30th shloka of 3rd chapter. Bhagavan says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chaitasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvara. O Arjuna, perform all your actions by offering them to me. Meditate constantly on me. Become free from all desires. Nirashir. Nirmamo. Become free from selfishness. And let your mental grief go away. Don't be sad and do seva. Like we do seva sometimes being very sad. Somebody said something. Somebody hurt us. Somebody is not praising. No, not like that. Let go of all your mental grief. Give up all desires and selfishness. And fight. Fight. Remember, it's not external fight. Internal fight. And if you have to fight externally, that is also okay. As long as that fight is for dharma. Not for adharma. Because those who fight for adharma, they are the asuras. Those who fight for dharma, they are the Devi, Trinities, Devatas. So this fight is eternal. It is not going to stop. And you must fight. That is why even in Puranas we also come across this Samudra Manthan, the churning of the ocean. It is mentioned in Vishnu Purana and Bhagavad Purana, I think. That churning of the milky ocean, that also denotes the same concept. On one side you have asuras, on one side you have devatas, and they are churning the milky ocean, fighting with each other. And finally, with this effort, Amritam comes out from that churning. That is the grace of the Divine Mother, grace of the Devi, the nectar of wisdom. So our effort is important. Only then we can get grace. Now, remember that Rishi is telling this story not because Suratha and Samadhi wanted to hear a story. That is not why they went to Rishi. They went to Rishi because they wanted to get rid of their suffering. So the story is told with the aim so that Suratha and Samadhi can get rid of sorrow. And it is the same for us. Durga Saptashati, the main goal is for us to get rid of our suffering. Get rid of our sorrow, tapatraya. And to be able to get rid of our suffering, there is none other better than the Divine Mother herself. Divine Mother Devi is the door to ultimate wisdom, to the true happiness. You see, even in Amma's Brahmasthanam temples, which Amma has consecrated, many of them. Amma's Brahmasthanam temple, you see, there are the idol has 4 sides, so to speak. But there is one idol, 4 sides, which means these 4 sides represent the same ultimate reality. The first one which you see when you enter the temple is the Devi. And on the right, on the back side of Devi, opposite side is Shiva. On the right side of Devi, you see none other than Ganesha on the right side. And Devi's hand is like this, blessing. And on the left side, you see Murugana or Rahu. And Devi's hand is like this, Abhaya Mudra. So there is a very deeper significance of this Brahmasthanam idol. Devi and Shiva on 2 sides, like 2 sides of the coin. One coin, but 2 sides, 2 aspects. Shiva and Shakti. Devi and Shiva, ultimate reality, one and the same. Right side, Ganesha, all auspiciousness, blessings. Left side, Rahu, Murugan. Rahu creates obstacles in our life. But Devi is saying, don't worry, Abhayam on that side. Come to me, take refuge in me, and be fearless. With my blessings, none of the obstacles will ever create any problem for you. So that is the significance of Brahmasthanam. But it also signifies that the door to Shiva, the door to ultimate reality, is through Devi. So through all these stories, we have to remember that Rishi is pointing to an inner transformation. The Asuras which are sitting right now within us have to be annihilated. If they are not annihilated, no matter, even if we read scriptures like Durga Saptashati and do a Chandi part for years together, chanting them 10 times a day, nothing is going to happen. There may be a little bit of benefit here and there, but that will be very, very minuscule compared to what it is capable of. The real potential of Durga Saptashati lies in understanding its deeper significance.